Welcome back to the Branson broadcast. Happy to have you back. We've been talking about theories of origins, basically, and I've already talked about the philosophy of evolution. It's a philosophy, not a scientific theory. So, the philosophy of evolution and the philosophy of old Earth creationism, and I found them really both wanting. There's serious objections that I have to either one of those, and so we need to think about what is left over. Now, I could I could talk about Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism and the other 10,000 isms that are out there, or I could just go with what the Bible says. Since it's the Bible that's always being attacked and censored everywhere, I mean, there are countries in the world where you cannot buy a Bible. And if they find you with a Bible, there will be serious consequences. I don't think very many countries are censoring the Book of Mormon, for example, or even the Quran. Maybe North Korea and China, possibly Russia. But other ones, if you want to buy a Quran, you can get a Quran. I have one myself. So let's look at what the Bible says, because it seems to me like that's the one that everybody is attacking. In fact, I saw this quote by Stephen King. He said this: whatever it is that your parents and teachers or whoever don't want you to read is probably the thing you need the most to find out. So I would find out what's being censored, what's been pulled from the shelves of your school library, and I would run to the nearest public library or to a bookstore and pick it up. Whether it's Cujo, Lord of the Flies, Lady Chatterley's Lover, go get it and find out what they don't want you to know, because that's what you need to know. End quote. So if we use that and apply it to the Bible, everybody, a lot of people tell you don't read the Bible. Maybe you should find out why. See, so I'm just going to go with the philosophy of what the Bible teaches, and we're going to take it literally, and I'll have to explain what I mean by that in a later session, but we're going to believe what it says, basically, right? So let's think about this. We talked about evolution, Keno, old Earth creationism or theistic evolution, also invalid. So what's left? Well, the Bible says that the earth was created, right? That there was an intelligent designer that created it a short time ago. Let's just say it that way. Now, once you recognize that the universe cannot come into existence on its own, because it's impossible for something to come from nothing, once you realize that the universe cannot come into existence on its own, it's easy to believe that something else created it, right? An intelligent entity. That entity has revealed himself to the extent that he is able, or better, to the extent that we are able to understand him, through the writings of men that he has influenced to do so. We call that inspiration. He moved men to write certain things and made sure that they wrote exactly what he wanted to say. Not difficult for an omnipotent creator to do that, eh? So you can imagine that a being capable of creating the at least 15 septillion celestial bodies in a space 90 billion light years in diameter, you'd think they would be able to do so in any amount of time, but apparently chose to do so in 6 days. In fact, I think there was I'm going to call it a heresy some centuries ago, that religious people were saying, no, God created, the universe in 1 day or in a minute or in an instant. And somebody had to point out, well, if you're going to believe the Bible, you have to believe that God said he did it in 6 days for whatever reason. Of course, he could have done it in less time. He could have done it in more time. So let's just go with what he said and stick with that. Usually a very good idea to do. All right. So if we're going to take the Bible at face value, then we need to believe that God already existed before the universe. He created the material universe and everything in it. Now, there are some critics, chief among them Richard Dawkins, who has said on several occasions, I've seen several videos, where they just like to say, oh, creationists, you know, they don't know how things work, so they just say, God did it. Well, of course, we believe that God did it because, as I just mentioned, we believe he created everything. It's not the idea is not that we don't understand and so we just think God did it. There's this one guy, his name is Stephen Meyer. He's written several books and he argues in favor of intelligent design. And he said that by doing science, we are discovering God's design and revealing it to mankind. In fact, there's this other guy, Joseph Needham, who has studied I believe it's like the history of scientific thought or whatever. And he discovered that the scientific method arose between the 16th and 17th centuries in Europe. And he asked himself, why there and why then? Because he points out that the Chinese, for 2,000 or more years ago, they have been doing some amazing discoveries and inventions. The Egyptians with their pyramids and everything. I mean, other cultures, other continents have their discoveries, but it was the scientific method that was developed, I guess we could say, in the 16th and 17th centuries. And so he asked himself, why? Why did it happen there and then? Well, he discovered that was because that was the center, the seat of the Judeo-Christian worldview, the ideology, we could say. And he says that only the Judeo-Christian West had the necessary intellectual presuppositions to enable the rise of science. Doesn't mean they were the only intellectuals on the face of the earth. Don't misunderstand me. But it was their presuppositions. What were those presuppositions? Well, that God would be a God of order. If he created everything and he communicated with us, it's like he wanted us to know these things, right? And so that's why I said before, by doing science, and we're talking about guys like Sir Isaac Newton and other men, important scientists of the past, most of them believed in God. So they believed that God was a God of order and that by doing science, they could discover God's design and reveal it to mankind, right? So they assumed intelligibility, they assumed intelligence, they assumed design based on the rationality of God. They presupposed the contingency of nature. In other words, that God had many choices to do and make things. So they could observe, test, and measure in order to understand the choice that he made. In other words, this is how he decided to make people. He could have done it other ways, but this is what he did. And so they analyze everything and they try to decipher the order. Now, that does not mean that you need to believe in God in order to do real science. The guys who discovered DNA are not, they are atheists through and through. Evolution believing atheists, right? So they are very intelligent and they were able to discover an amazing amount of design, even though they didn't recognize it. Even though they didn't believe in God, they were still able to do real science and make that discovery. And over the years, that was in the 50s, I think, over the last 50 or 70 years, more amazing discoveries have been made. And in fact, in one of the previous videos, I shared another YouTube video that shows how DNA gets copied and replicates itself, for cell division and all of this. It's just mind-blowing, the things that happen in our bodies. So All of that to say that I believe in young earth creationism because I believe that God exists. The universe could not create itself, and therefore God created it. And if God created it and he took the time to give us a book to explain or to try to reveal himself to us, then that's what we ought to do. We ought to look at his word and find out how to explain the universe based on the information that he has given us. A lot of people will disagree with me, but that's my philosophy. And I said, I think it was the first sentence of my first video, our understanding of or our our interpretation of the evidence is based on our philosophy of how everything came to be. And so that's what I believe, and that's that's the basis of the studies that we're going to do from here on out. So thank you for watching. I hope that you'll join us and see what we can discover together. All right. Bye-bye.